I, 31 male, proposed to my girlfriend of 3 years, 8 months ago. I own my house, work construction management, drive a paid-off truck. Nothing flashy. I'm practical. My grandmother raised me after my parents divorced when I was 9. She was the anchor of this whole family, showed up to every graduation, every hard moment, every time things fell apart. She passed 14 months ago. Colon cancer. Fast and cruel. I kept a few things of hers after she passed. Her Bible, a quilt she made, and a dress. It was a black dress, elegant, understated, pearl buttons down the front, lace trim at the sleeves. She wore it to my grandfather's funeral in 1987 and specifically asked me to keep it. Don't let anyone throw it away. It meant something. I kept it folded in a garment bag in the back of my closet. Hadn't looked at it in months because every time I did something cracked open in my chest I wasn't ready to deal with. Now, my fiancée. I want to be fair about who she was because she wasn't always the person this story turns her into. She was funny, spontaneous, had this energy that made rooms feel louder. I'm quieter and steadier, so I was drawn to that. Opposites attracting, I thought. But there were moments, small ones I talked myself out of. She returned a handmade cookbook my mother gave her because it didn't match the kitchen aesthetic. She told my best friend's wife that her engagement ring was sweet, in a tone that meant the opposite. She reorganized my entire tool shelf in the garage without asking and got defensive when I asked her not to touch my equipment. I was trying to help. You're so rigid. I told myself these were quirks. Personality differences. I was too serious, she was too spontaneous, and somewhere in the middle was a marriage. Then she started planning the wedding, and the quirks stopped being quirks. First meeting with the venue coordinator, she introduced herself as the creative director of this event and told the coordinator that my input was more logistical than aesthetic. Fine. I genuinely don't care about centerpieces. But then she started making statements that weren't questions. We're doing a night wedding. Cocktail heavy. No sit-down dinner. Those are boring. My grandmother's side of the family is elderly. My aunt uses a walker. A 4-hour standing cocktail event wasn't going to work, and when I said that, she stared at me like I'd suggested something offensive. I'm not designing my wedding around people's physical limitations. I sat with that sentence for 3 days. Brought it up again calmly. She said she'd think about it. Added a few high-top tables and called it solved. Conversation closed, as far as she was concerned. Then came the dress announcement. We were eating takeout on the couch when she said, completely casual, I've been thinking about wearing black to the wedding. I looked at her. Like, as an accent? No. Full black bridal gown. I'm not doing the white thing, it's too basic. Every bride does it. I want to stand out. I didn't have a strong reaction at first. It's her day too. I meant that. I said it. It's your day too. If that's what you want, I support it. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said I was the most understanding man she'd ever dated. I should have paid more attention to how quickly she moved on from that conversation. 2 weeks later, she posted a photo on her Instagram. She'd made a separate wedding planning account to document the journey, which I found performative but harmless. My cousin texted me the screenshot at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, before I'd had coffee. Hey, is this what I think it is? The caption read, Edgy bride era. Why wear white when black is eternal? Found the most perfect vintage piece. It chose me. The photo was her standing in front of our bedroom mirror, one hand on her hip, holding a small bouquet of dark flowers. The dress had pearl buttons down the front, lace at the sleeves. I knew before I finished looking at it. I walked to my closet, moved the winter coats, reached into the back corner where I kept the garment bag. Empty. I stood there holding an empty garment bag that still smelled faintly like her cedar chest. Then I went back to my phone and looked at the photo again. She had gone into my closet, opened a sealed garment bag, taken a dress she had never once asked about, and posted it publicly as her vintage find. I called my aunt, my grandmother's youngest daughter, and without saying anything leading, just said, Hey, I wanted to ask you about Grandma's black dress. Do you remember it? There was a pause. The one she wore to your grandfather's funeral? Of course. Why? I'm going to send you a photo. Just tell me what you think. I forwarded the screenshot. 30 seconds of silence. That's her dress. Those are the pearl buttons. I sewed one back on myself in 1994. It's slightly off-center on the third button. Is that? Why is your fiancé wearing it? My aunt's voice had gone completely flat. That flatness was worse than if she'd yelled. She came home that evening while I was sitting at the kitchen table with my phone face up, screenshot visible. She walked in talking about something from work, dropped her bag, opened the fridge, only stopped when she noticed I hadn't responded to anything she said. She turned around. What's wrong? I slid the phone across the table. She looked at it. Her expression didn't collapse, it shifted, recalibrated. That was the tell. Someone genuinely surprised shows confusion first. She showed calculation. I found it in the closet. It was just sitting there in a bag. I didn't know it was. You didn't know it was what? I asked. You didn't know it was in a sealed garment bag in the back of my closet? You didn't know to ask me before you took it? I didn't know it was sentimental. It looked vintage. I thought you'd forgotten about it. I told you about my grandmother's belongings when she passed. I told you I was keeping specific things. You didn't specifically mention a dress. And there it was. The redirect. The technicality. You didn't specifically mention it, so the responsibility shifted. That's not a confused person. That's a practiced one. Take it off the post, I said. Tonight. She crossed her arms. It's already got 200 comments. People love it. It's become part of our wedding story. It's my grandmother's funeral dress. Take it down. You're overreacting. I looked at her for a long second. My aunt recognized it from the photo. She sewed one of the buttons back on herself. She called me. That landed. She went quiet. She took the post down. She didn't apologize. She put the dress back in the garment bag and set it on the bed like a package being returned, then went to the guest room and closed the door. I moved the garment bag back to my closet. Didn't sleep much. The next 3 days were weaponized silence. She didn't apologize. She didn't bring it up. When I tried to address it, she'd say, I already took it down, what more do you want? As if removing evidence of a thing undoes the thing itself. Then the dirty trick started. For days after the dress incident, she called my mother. I didn't know this until my mother called me saying my fiancé had reached out to clear the air and explained that I'd been going through something emotionally since my grandmother passed, and that I'd had an intense reaction to a wedding dress choice that she was trying to be understanding about. She had framed the entire situation as my grief, making me irrational. My mother is sharp. She asked me directly what happened, and I told her everything: the garment bag, the post, my aunt recognizing the button she'd sewn. My mother went quiet for a moment, and then said, She called me before you could. She knew you'd tell me. That was when I understood this wasn't going to be a private disagreement. She was going to manage the narrative, and she was going to do it proactively, using my grief as the explanation for any version of events that made her look bad. Then she went after the guest list. We had a venue contract in both our names, attendance capped at 120 guests, deposit split evenly at $1,900 each. While things were still cold between us, I got an email from the venue coordinator CCing my fiancé, confirming a modification to the guest list cap she had apparently requested, bringing the maximum down from 120 to 80. 40 people cut. Without telling me. I checked the revised list. Every person removed was from my side. My father's cousins. 3 of my work friends I'd known for a decade. My grandmother's book club friends. Elderly women who had known me since elementary school, who I specifically wanted there as a way of honoring her memory. When I confronted her, she said, The venue feels more intimate at 80. I made an executive decision. You don't get to make executive decisions alone on a shared contract. You said wedding planning wasn't your thing. Not caring about centerpieces isn't the same as consenting to you erasing my entire guest list. She shrugged. I'm trying to curate an experience, not host a nursing home reunion. I contacted the venue directly and had the modification reversed. She found out within the hour. You went around me. You went around me first, I said. Twice. Then she went to my best friend. He was going to be my best man. She met him for coffee and told him she was worried about me. that I'd been acting erratic and controlling since my grandmother died, and that she was scared of who I was becoming. She cried. He told me later she'd cried, which mattered because in 3 years I had never once seen her cry. He came to me troubled, didn't accuse me of anything because he's a good friend, but said, "She seems genuinely scared. I just want to make sure you're okay." I told him to come over. I showed him everything. The screenshot of the Instagram post, the text from my aunt identifying the dress, and the button. The venue email showing the guest list modification with the timestamp proving she'd done it unilaterally. The voicemail my mother had saved where my fiancé's framing was clearly designed to preempt mine. He sat with it and said, "She got to me before you could." "She's been doing that with everyone," I said. I spent a week thinking. Then I called off the engagement. I told her directly. She was in performance mode, soft voice, concerned eyes. "I feel like we've both been really stressed and I think we need to reset. I'm calling off the engagement," I said. The soft expression flickered, then hardened into something I hadn't seen before. Not hurt. Fury. "Because of a dress?" "Because of a pattern," I said. "The dress was just the one I could prove." "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but not as much as I'd regret the alternative." She didn't leave quietly. She was on the lease as an occupant, not a co-lessee. I had signed the original lease 3 years before she moved in and added her as an occupant, not as a co-tenant. But she immediately said, "I'm not moving out. This is my home too." Then she went to work. She contacted the wedding vendors and attempted to redirect the deposits into her name alone. The florist called me saying my fiancé had come and requesting the contract be reissued solely in her name. The venue got an email from her claiming I had withdrawn from the planning process, implying I'd voluntarily stepped back rather than ended the engagement. I sent every single vendor a formal written notice within 48 hours that the engagement had ended and no unilateral changes were authorized. I moved faster than she expected because she expected me to be emotionally paralyzed. Then she posted on her wedding Instagram about navigating heartbreak while staying true to yourself. Didn't use my name, but used enough detail that anyone who knew us knew exactly who she meant. Described me as emotionally unavailable and unable to handle a strong woman with a vision. 240 comments, most supportive of her, several from people in my own social circle. I didn't respond publicly. I took screenshots. Then she posted her version of the dress story. Framed it as her having innocently borrowed a vintage dress and me having exploded over it as an excuse to end things because commitment scared him. She described my grandmother, without naming her, as a woman whose memory he weaponizes to control the people around him. My aunt saw that post. I have never heard my aunt use the language she used when she called me. She's a 67-year-old retired schoolteacher who goes to church every Sunday. She called Eleanor a weapon, my aunt said. She took that woman's dress, put it on the internet, and now she's calling her a weapon. "I know," I said. "What are we going to do about it?" That was the moment I stopped being reactive and started being deliberate. First, I handled the house. I called my landlord, confirmed that as the sole leaseholder I had the right to remove a non-signing occupant with proper notice, and served her a formal written 30-day notice to vacate, documented and dated. She called a lawyer within 24 hours. Her lawyer sent a letter claiming tenancy rights based on duration of occupancy. My real estate attorney reviewed the lease and confirmed that her status as a non-signing occupant did not grant her co-tenant protections under state law given the lease terms and the fact that she had not contributed to the original lease agreement. My attorney sent a response letter citing the specific statutes. She backed down on the housing fight within 2 weeks and moved out on day 28. But before she moved out, she went after the ring. The engagement ring I proposed with was my grandmother's ring, left specifically for me in her will, documented in the probate records, with a letter from my grandmother's estate attorney confirming the ring had been transferred to me as a specific bequest. She had her lawyer send a letter asserting that I had constructively abandoned the relationship and that she was entitled to keep the ring. When my attorney presented the will, the probate records, and the estate letter confirming the ring was an inherited family heirloom transferred through a legal estate process, Her attorney stopped responding to that thread within 48 hours. She returned the ring. Now here is the part one want to describe carefully, because it wasn't petty or emotional. It was just accurate. I called my aunt and asked if she'd be willing to post something. Just once. Just the facts. She agreed. My aunt posted a single photo on her personal Facebook, where she had several hundred friends and family members, many of whom overlapped with my fiancé's Instagram followers. The photo was of my grandmother in her black dress, standing at my grandfather's funeral in 1987. Next to it was a screenshot of my former fiancé's Edgy bride post. My aunt's caption was 11 words. "This is my mother's funeral dress. She passed 14 months ago." That was it. No drama. No call-out. It spread. Within 48 hours, people who had commented on my former fiancé's post had seen it. The comment sections shifted. People who had praised her vintage find went quiet. My former fiancé made her Instagram private. Then she deleted the wedding planning account entirely. She worked in marketing and managed brand partnerships for a lifestyle company. Her personal Instagram presence, follower count, engagement rate, aesthetic was part of how she got clients. When she deleted the wedding account and made her main account private, she lost a significant chunk of followers. A brand she'd been in talks with for a partnership reached out asking why her engagement metrics had dropped and why there was a viral Facebook post connecting her to the unauthorized use of a deceased woman's funeral dress. She lost the partnership. I know this through a cousin who worked tangentially in the same industry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't contact her employer. I didn't orchestrate anything. She built a public persona on someone else's grief and someone else's grandmother's dress. When the foundation was accurately identified, the persona collapsed on its own weight. The legal stuff wrapped up cleanly. Vendor deposits split according to what each contract specified for mutual cancellation. I lost some money. Enough to sting, not enough to matter long-term. My former fiancé and I haven't spoken since she returned the ring through her attorney's office. I drove to my aunt's house the following Sunday. She made pot roast. Before I left, I brought the dress in from my truck and asked her to keep it. She looked at me for a long moment. "You sure?" "She gave it to me to preserve it," I said. "You're the right person to do that. You already fixed one of the buttons." My aunt took the dress and held it the way you hold something you thought you'd lost. She didn't make a big production of it. Just nodded and said, "I'll take care of it." The ring is back in my dresser. The dress is in my aunt's cedar chest. My best man is still my best man. My house is quiet in the way I like it now. I'm 31. I have time. If you've been calling a pattern a quirk, look at the whole thing from far enough back. You'll know what you're looking at. And if this kept you reading till the end, hit subscribe because unlike my ex's Instagram, this account isn't going private